before we get another perspective on the controversial 2025 budget and the tragic Christmas charity stampede, a clear case of good intention, of course, turning sour. Before we get into that, let's just tell you that the president will be having a presidential media chart that will be at 9, and Arise News will be airing that live. So we urge you to stay on the station till then, so you can listen to the president and, of course, what he has to do. By the way, I am glad to have a legislative and policy expert, a former lawmaker, Honorable West Idahosa. He joins us now on Prime Time. Glad to have you join me. We're discussing about
Thank you very much for having
camera,
me. Yes.
and stuff like that. Well, what I call, I don't know, a show of shame. I mean, someone described it this way: desperate crowds and fruits of death. That's how some have described the show of shame across the nation. You have 35 children in a battle, the Battle of Basharu Stampede. Yeah. You have 10 in Okija, and then you have 10 in Abuja, and then of course you have 22 in Anambra State. What do you make of these incidents?
Well, it's very sad, regrettable, but it tells you how arbitrary we are as a people. Now, I would prefer to fault the organizers. There was a point in this country where, I think on that late 20 they in this country, regardless of the size of the crowd, there was some order. We have lost quite a lot of order. We're in a state of disorder. We have become people so comfortable with being arbitrary in nature. Otherwise, shouldn't you know that you're going to be dealing with human beings, even in your charity, and that you should have a defined protocol? Shouldn't you know that there must be some level of security? Do you need to be told that? Do you also need to be told that you have to put certain protocols in place to prevent the type of thing that has happened? Because the poverty level of the country is high. But you must not, because you want to do charity, fail to take certain things as priority. I think that is one of the very big lessons we have to learn. Now that we seem not to be able to organize ourselves, now more rules have to come in now from government. It should now become apparent to various government apparatus that there should be some minimum requirements to be met by those who wish to promote charity and to do good.
Well, some states have made, I don't know whether to call it medicine after death. Some states have listed some conditions for palliative distribution. For example, just give you 3 examples. 1, Lagos State says you must register with state agencies.
Correct.
2, new crowd control guidelines. Even the police alluded to that. And then 3, multiple, if you must hold it, then it must be in a place where you have multiple access points.
Right.
What do you, I'm thinking, this is probably like medicine after death, but I don't know how you say it.
No, well, it's mitigation of a big loss. There will always be those who want to do good. There will continue to be charity in the world. So to that extent, this lesson, even though irreversible, because you cannot bring life back, should serve as a point to save more lives. And in respect for those that have lost their lives, we must try to get these things in order so that we don't continue to do the same thing over and over again.
Now, someone asked a tragic, some asked, as tragic as these events were, it's past now, will it be the last? He prayed that it will be, but is prayer enough? Should we even depend on prayer for basic human errors?
Well, you see, because we have become so inefficient as units of organization in our country, we are probably now running a spiritual government, whereas we operate a modern constitutional democracy in our country. Well, I can't rule out prayers because one accepts the creation of the world by an Almighty. And so we dedicate our successes and to Him and ask Him to help us in our failures. But more than just praying and doing nothing is to ensure that the set of rules for giving activities are defined. That's what happens in many developed climes. That's not to say that there would probably not be an unprecedented type of stampede. We've seen that in big football fields in developed countries where football is a near religion. But again, it doesn't happen all the time.
All the time.
And when it does happen, there's a serious investigation leading to identification of the errors, and then a proposal for solutions, and possibly new legislative regulations to stop it and to punish future wrongdoers.
When you blame people who organize these charity events, some will say West. In as much as I might agree with you or not, but where do you leave the government? For example, PDP puts the blame squarely at the foot of the government in power. They said they have neglected their responsibilities. How did we get here where the cost of living has gone so high that an event in Ibadan that was scheduled to start by 10, people went to the place by 4 a.m. in the morning, and mothers were throwing their children over, the gates were locked, so they were dropping that even by the time of the event, for a 5,000 pittance and some gifts, children were stepped upon, and what has brought us to this point? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think it's something that PDP can truly morally stand on a high ground and talk about this being a recurring decima in our country. The only difference is that we haven't had it at this level. Now, you can't divorce what's going on from the abysmal level of poverty in the country. There's a multiplicity of poverty. There's multi-dimensional poverty going on, where you have poverty at various points of life. You just can't afford energy, you can't afford food, you can't buy kerosene, you can't afford cooking gas, you simply cannot afford food items.
And the prices are going up by the day.
Spiraling up. And because of this, more people are unable to meet daily exigencies, including the physiological need to feed. Feeding is a matter of physiology. You don't do so, you know the consequence. You go to the other side.
You can go without, you can,
prematurely. So, because of that, food will continue to be a necessity. And so people must understand, especially those who intend to invite the less privileged, that look, given the environmental situation, given the reality on ground.
The reality, yes.
On ground, we are likely to be getting more than we can
manage.
And that's the reason why extra precaution, extra care protocols must be put in place. You just can't bring out food now. Bring out a sack of packed food right now, it's an invitation to chaos, because the zeal to survive, either by physiological hunger or by pathological greed, which is also another characteristic of today's Nigeria, the need to get what you don't need has become something.
What you don't really need.
Yeah, what you don't need, really, become also another element of the society. So either way you look at it, you should be ready for the upsurge in such activities. So those who enjoy the credit of being associated with feeding the poor must know that they must also take the blame for failing to put in place the necessary paraphernalia of security and protocol to at least minimize potential danger that could arise from that type of thing.
Maybe they didn't foresee the extent to which people really need this money.
No, I think it should be foreseeable now, because it's almost discernible even to the blind now, the state where we are. If you go around.
The state where we are, you can't take the government out of it.
No, what I'm saying, if you go around, the poverty is discernible. But the question is, the elements that make poverty reduce are government propelled. So if a government says, well, we have come into power, we identify these and these and these as developmental factors that we must put in place, the government should also be able to project its consequences.
Yeah.
Because policies have repercussions.
That's it.
And that's why you have policy reviews. You also have room for policy evaluation and re-evaluation. And policy somersaults. Because if a policy...
You're not talking as a lawmaker.
Yes, if a policy
Former
takes
lawmaker.
you to a point where rather than feel pleasure, you feel the pain.
Yeah.
Because life is principally governed by two principalities, pain and pleasure,
Yeah.
period. You're either here
or
there. And so to that extent, if a policy inflicts so much pain, then there's a review of that policy. And then the policy review may lead to a solution. There can be an intervention. All right? How far the intervention goes is a different thing entirely.
And then sticking to that policy when you see the consequences is another, it's a wrong way of reasoning.
Yeah, but sometimes we call that policy recalcitrance because there are many governments that think that they have more knowledge than the people they lead.
Okay.
That doesn't always work.
Serap feels that 9.4 billion for travel and catering for the president, 344.85 billion naira, 2 for the lawmakers, of which you were formerly one.
Yeah.
At the time, Nigerians are perishing because they went in search of food. Serap says it's excessive, it's insensitive. What do you make of that provision?
Well, again, I will say that the budget envelope contains certain details which probably at the time of Sarah's comment, and even as we speak now, are clearly not known to everyone. I know that they have a commission, I know they have a couple of bureaucrats, and I know that the politically elected lawmakers themselves have a plethora of aides. Now the question is, whether 344 is realistic at this time, it will be a matter of details. And those details are not readily available.
That's what Serap is saying, accountability, transparency.
Yes, so what I think the National Assembly should do all the time, because they are always a soft target, having been directly elected by the people, and will be
the voice of the people.
They ought to always put out there these details so that people can see exactly what they plan to do. And they should never be too reluctant to admit any inflation where there has been any, and then readjust it. And where there has been inadequacy, they should also make the case to the public and adjust the figures upward if necessary. After all, they are the biggest contact of our democratic experiment. They are the voice of the people.
Serap also feels that at a time that the nation is experiencing what you call a borrowing quagmire, it's odd, it's unfair and unjust that FG and lawmakers are spending so much money.
Well, you see, the truth is that FG...
Even considering the servicing, the debt servicing, which is more than the additions of
which is about 13.3.
No, debt servicing is 15.8 trillion. Not even the deficit.
Okay, about that. Okay, not the deficit, but the deficit is about 13.3.
Yeah, 13.3.
The debt service is about 15 point something
8
trillion. Yeah, but you see, the argument has always been that this is what they need to do to improve direct foreign investment into the country, to give the country's business system more credibility. So I believe that with the National Assembly, once they provide the details, then we can take a more holistic look at that. There shouldn't be some level of secretiveness about that, because that brings down a deficit in accountability. And that's the most important part of budgeting. It's not about the figures. It's about how you use it and the right of the people to know.
Implementation.
Because how you use it and the right of the people to know. Because it's possible that you don't finish spending all the money, and the return process must be known to them, so that you don't keep repeating the same line items every year.
That is in brief, 30 seconds or 45 seconds, the question of money provided for rehabilitation by the government. I think that's about 26 billion, which is double of that of 2024. Why do you have to keep on rehabilitating every year? Do you have to keep on doing that?
It will depend on whether the money was actually expended.
Well, Tobet talked about that, but then doubling it, I don't understand, because it doubled.
Yeah, because assuming they say that the Naira's value have severely declined. The building cost of building materials are escalating. You don't expect to see the same level of pricing.
But then does that mean that they just go and spoil the building and they have to rehabilitate it and stuff like that every
No,
year
well,
or
again,
something?
one would be not too sure because from the figures we are seeing, it doesn't look particularly attached to a given building. It looks to me like a blanket figure for giving renovation.
The more reason Nigerians should know what they're talking about. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Honorable West Idahosa, for being on the program. All
appreciate
right,
it.
well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye, and thank you for watching.